Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar here this evening. Thank you for joining us. I've got a nice crowd, it looks like, and looking forward to an informative time with you. But again, I very much appreciate you spending time with us here this evening. I'd like to begin with prayer and just move forward from there. So if you would, please join me in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, as we approach the end of this school year, we still want to offer up a prayer of thanksgiving. While the end has been challenging in many ways and different for sure, we still come to you with a heart that is filled with thanksgiving for the many, many blessings that have unfolded since last August when we started this school year. We thank you for that. We thank you for the love that abounds in our school. We thank you for the wonderful teachers who've worked so hard to bring forth the talents and gifts of our students. We thank you for our parents who continue to be resilient in their support of our school. And most significantly, Lord, we thank you for the young people, the very reason we're here. We thank you for them. We thank you for the energy they brought to our school this year. We ask you to watch over all of us, Lord, as we move into this summertime. Bless us with time for rest and relaxation. We pray for all this in Christ's name. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, welcome once again, and thanks for joining us. This is our third webinar. We had a webinar for incoming freshman parents about 2.5 weeks ago. We had a webinar last week for our seniors and senior parents to detail some of the senior activities that we'll be hosting here beginning this Saturday with a distribution of senior boxes here on the front circle, and then hopefully continuing to culminate with a celebration of graduation at the stadium here on Tuesday, July 21st. So this is our third webinar of the year. My portion tonight, I'm going to do a quick review here of this final quarter of the school year and the e-learning that we found ourselves immersed in. I'm going to take a little bit of a look for next year, and then I'll turn it over to, I'm going to speak a little bit to a third one about the potential of reopening our campus on July 1st and what that might look like, pending the directives were given by the governor, the Department of Education, and the Department of Health. So that's my part, and then I'll turn it over to Dave Gervasio, who's got a wonderful plethora of information tonight about financial aid, tuition for next year, and so forth. So for the 9 weeks of extended e-learning, obviously we felt like we were well prepared for e-learning, but like most, if not all schools in the country, we were well prepared for a couple of days of e-learning. I don't think anyone in their right mind had planned for or had envisioned 9 weeks of e-learning. So as we wrap up those 9 weeks of e-learning on Thursday of this week, I do extend a heartfelt thank you to especially our students and our teachers, who I think have worked harder than they've ever worked. I know our teachers have worked harder than they've ever worked to make all this possible. Certainly want to extend a thank you and appreciation to our parents and guardians, and probably in many cases grandparents, who've also had to take on a different role during these 9 weeks. We're very, very appreciative of that. We have had surveys go out. Parents should have received a survey on Monday of this week. We've had about 200, I checked right before we came on, about 274 responses. So again, if you've not completed that survey, please do so. That will be helpful to us in our planning. Our students got their e-learning survey last Friday. We're at about the same number, honestly, about 281 this evening. And then our teachers also got an electronic survey. So we really feel that we're going to try to get the feedback we need from all three of those constituencies, and take that and then move forward from there. I can say, again, I've not done extensive review of the data that's come back, but I did check multiple times today, and of the students, we've had 281 students complete that survey. 91% of them indicated they were either very successful or successful with their e-learning. So that was encouraging to see such a high percentage of our students. Now, again, only 281 students have completed the survey, but it was good to hear that. I also noticed on the parent survey that we got about 92% of our parents indicate they at least thought the communications that the school employed during these past 9 weeks were very effective and very helpful. So again, if you haven't already submitted your surveys, please do so. I am excited. Our technology integration specialist has been meeting with our IT staff all week. I got an update from them today around 4 o'clock. They already have a plan in place for this coming summer for professional development activities for our teachers. It'll be based on, again, some of the feedback we've already gotten in terms of the tools, the technology tools, and the strategies that were found to be most effective over these past 9 weeks, so that we'll be in-servicing more and more of our staff so that a higher percentage of staff can be using those tools and strategies that have proven to be effective. So I appreciate the work they're putting in as well. There is a potential plan for doing some in-servicing for our students as well who may need help, either becoming more adept at using some of the technology tools. We don't have that ironed out as yet, but if we do get so, we'll be communicating that to our families. So that's a little bit of a quick review over the e-learning. Very, very challenging, I'm sure, but very, very appreciative of the great work that's been done by students and teachers. So I'm not sure what it's like in your professional world, but I suspect it's very similar to the professional world that Dave Gervasio and myself, and Therese Carson is our producer tonight, our Vice President for institutional advancement, is at her home, kind of calling all the shots behind the scene, kind of like mission control for NASA. But I suspect your world is much like ours in this regard. Lots and lots of questions with very few answers. Lots and lots of questions with very few answers. And I will just say personally, for me, for somebody whose job typically relies upon either having answers or getting those answers, this has been very challenging to every day wake up to more and more questions for which we just simply don't quite have all the answers yet. So I'm going to try to walk you through a little bit about what next year could look like. But again, this won't be Chuck Weisenbach's decision. You know, what Roncalli looks like on August the 5th certainly will have a direct impact from the governor of this state, from the Indiana Department of Education, from the Archdiocese Office of Catholic Education, and the Marion County Department of Health. All of those, I'm sure, are going to play some role in what Roncalli looks like on August 5th. I can tell you this, that we are planning to be back in school on August the 5th in person, live with live teaching and live students and live teachers and all that. That's the plan. That's where we're shooting for. But to be prudent, and quite frankly, to follow the directives that we're currently receiving from all those agencies I've already stated, the governor, DOE, Archdiocese, we have to be planning for other alternatives in case that doesn't happen. And so I see at least 3, 4, maybe as many as 5 different options that might unfold in August. One, as we said, and not only as we said, we're praying daily that we'll be back in action, full bore, full go, in person on that August 5th. The next one could be that we start in August 5th in an in-person, total normal school year, but might be forced into an e-learning situation, just depending upon how the virus reacts in our community. And some schools are saying that could be very sporadic. So you could be in for 4 weeks and then out for a week, and then in for 4 weeks and out for a week. I'm just not advocating for that. I'm simply saying that's something we have to be attentive to. The opposite could be true as well. We could start into an e-learning format on August 5th and then find out at some point in that fall semester, be it September, October, November, that we're then allowed to move into the in-person format. So that's certainly another model. The one that seems to be most talked about, but with very little detail, would be what some people continue to call a hybrid model. And again, there's been a lot of talk about it, but not a lot of detail attached to it. So what I've gleaned so far would be that in a hybrid model, some percentage of our students would be in school possibly every day, some percentage of them, and then that the students would rotate through what days they are physically in school and what days they would be e-learning from home. And so they're calling that a hybrid model, but again, exactly what that looks like, don't have specific at this point. I can tell you that the diocese does have task force already assembled, and we have been meeting. There's a task force for K through 8 schools and a task force through 9 through 12 schools. We've been meeting already for the last 3 to 4 weeks, dissecting all this, discussing it, and beginning to look at it, and that will intensify. I will say, obviously, we at Roncalli, our administrative team, and our department chairpersons, who are kind of the backbone of our academic programming, they too will be involved in the process. But quite frankly, I really wanted to let them get to the end of the school year. They're working long, long days already. I didn't feel it was fair to encroach upon what little time they had left. So as soon as the school year wraps up, I'm going to give them a few days of rest and relaxation, and then we'll include them in these dialogues as well. As we find out more, obviously, from those constituencies I've already named, we'll continue to stay in communication with the Roncalli family Could be via email, could be via the voicemail, the robocalls that I make, could be email blasts, could be letters, could be a number of different communication systems. So that's what I know. And again, I know that lacks clarity. I know that well. It lacks clarity for me. But that's what we know right now as it relates to the start of the 2020-2021 school year. As most of you know, right now we're on a timeline that has the governor and our Department of Education Superintendent McCormick have closed all schools, all school campuses, all school buildings through June 30th. So right now we are tentatively scheduled to open our school and our school campus on July 1. We would allow student athletes to return to begin using our weight room and athletic facilities. We would allow our fine arts camps to unfold this summer as well. And we would have our own athletic camps for our young students here in the South Deanery and other schools. Now, before all that can happen, there'll have to be a very well thought out, well communicated plan that addresses all the health and safety issues and the protocols that will be put in place. We've had two really, really solid meetings so far. We're making great headway in identifying what those health and safety measures will be and what those protocols will be. This too, again, will have to be run by the Archdiocese and probably have to be run by the Marion County Department of Health. Once we have those in place, we'll certainly be communicating them to all in the Roncalli community. A target date for us, our target date is that week of June 22nd. We're hoping to have everything finalized and in a position to present that to our Roncalli community as to what school, what being on this campus and being in this building would look like on July 1. So that's a little bit of information there. The final piece that I can say with some certainty tonight, and it comes with great sadness, is that because of the pandemic, in terms of who's most compromised in these times, we felt it most prudent that we go ahead and cancel our Grandparents' Day celebration, which was scheduled for that Friday before Labor Day there in September. We just don't feel like we as a community, as a school, or a country will be in a position to host, what's typically about 900 to 1,000 grandparents, given the compromised situation that many of them would find themselves in. So we'll be emailing that out in our newsletter this week. We'll put it out on social media, but we are disappointed that we will not be able to have Grandparents' Day in the fall of 2020. We certainly plan to be back better than ever with Grandparents' Day in September of 2021. That's going to wrap up my initial section. I'm going to turn things over to Dave Gervasio, and then after Dave is done, some of you have submitted questions ahead of time. We'll begin answering those questions. I will let you know that you can submit questions tonight live via the chat button that's down at the bottom of your screen, and Mrs. Carson will be moderating those questions for us when Dave's done with his piece.
Thank you, Chuck. My name is Dave Gervasio. If I have not had a chance to meet you, I'm the Vice President for Finance and Facilities here at Roncalli High School. And typically at this time during the school year, we have already communicated with you what our tuition rates and our financial assistance packages are going to be for next year. We did have a delay in that process, and essentially the reason we had that delay is because Roncalli had applied for the payroll protection program, in which we were seeking funding from the federal government in terms of trying to add additional resources to the school. And the first distribution of the payroll protection program, Roncalli was not included in that and did not receive funding in that first distribution of funds. In the second distribution of funds, Roncalli was included in that distribution of funds, and that did affect what we are able to do with our tuition and financial assistance for the 2021 school year. So knowing that we did receive that and those fundings, the first obligation was to fulfill the requirements of the payroll protection program that is set forth by the government, and we have done that. We are also, it looks like, able to extend some of those funds through Roncalli and on to our entire Roncalli community, and we have tried to do that with both our tuition and our financial assistance program. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and Teresa, looks like it has me disabled to be able to share the screen. So if you can.
Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, try it now.
Yeah, there, we got it. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem. I'm sure people are sick of looking at me anyway already. So we did, in attempting to try and pass on some of that payroll protection monies to our entire community, one step that we are doing is freezing our tuition rates from what they were in the 2019-2020 school year. We are freezing those for the 2020-2021 school year. So the tuition rates that you see in front of you are the exact same as the current school year, and are trying to, as best we can, pass on some of that resource money to all of our Roncalli family. We have also, and this was just passed at our board meeting last night, in addition to the freezing of the tuition rates at our board meeting last night, we also passed an additional financial assistance package because even prior to the pandemic, roughly 40% of Roncalli families are either receiving a voucher or financial assistance from Roncalli, and that was going into the pandemic. So we fully understand and completely realize the financial strain that is put on many of our Roncalli families. So what we have done is added an additional $250,000 to our financial assistance pool. We have also added the number of review dates for our financial assistance as well. So typically, we had 4 review dates, and we understand the pandemic might not be over. It may come back, and if that is the case, we have tried to add additional review dates, 6 of them, one every other month during the school year, so that at some point in the school year, you should see possibly reduced income or increased expenses due to the pandemic. We just want you to know that Roncalli is here and available through the entire year if those circumstances do become difficult for your family. So we have added that additional financial assistance. And Amy Kuntz is the staff member here at Roncalli who takes care of our financial assistance program, and I have highlighted her name and email address. She would be the first contact for you at Roncalli High School, and we would certainly encourage all families to apply for assistance. We have also, in terms of our financial assistance, want to try and make it as easy as possible to get that into the hands of all of our families that are in need of financial assistance. We have our typical traditional financial assistance route in order to receive financial assistance. That is an application through the FACTS third-party company that evaluates our financial assistance. And that application can be found on our website under the admissions tab. That typically will give a very thorough investigation into your family profile and your finances. But as we can fully understand, it doesn't necessarily allow us to look at what has happened maybe here since March and since the COVID pandemic took place. So we have also added what we're referring to as a COVID financial assistance fund. This is allowing for a quick analysis of your family. You do not necessarily have to go through our traditional financial assistance program nor the application. It is a quick analysis, and it is found on the front page of the website under Roncalli Relief and Resource Survey. So I will talk a little bit more about those and also show you exactly where they are located on our website and on what web page it is on. So we have now 2 routes for financial assistance. You can actually apply for both routes. The reason we have added this second route for the COVID financial assistance funds is we also realize it's already May, and we're going to have financial assistance needs for the current school year. Obviously this took place before the last payment that was due in April. We may have assistance needs for our current financial assistance families, and we may have assistance needs for our future tuition in 2021. So if you are looking for a quick analysis, knowing we only have a month or two here at the remainder of this school year, especially prior to graduation and exams and grades, we are creating this quicker analysis, but would encourage you, if you are looking for tuition assistance for the 2021 school year, probably to go more towards our traditional financial assistance route. So with these two methods, they are both set up for financial assistance. We have added $250,000 to that financial assistance fund and hope that you do take advantage of that. So this front page where the COVID Financial Assistance Fund is available, there is a survey that is on our website, and I'll point you to exactly where that is here in just a second. So far we had actually advertised this survey earlier. We have had 53 responses to the survey, and it has gone unbelievably. I really love being a part of this community because of those 53 responses. 33 of them, or 57% of the responses, when you go through the survey, it's not just necessarily for financial hardship, but it also gives the opportunity to be able to help those that are in need, also pray for those that are in need, or if you are in need of prayer, that is possible as well. So in the current results of the survey, we have 57%, or 33 responses were wanting to help in some way, whether that's donation, prayer, meals, gift cards to families for food. We have had that and have moved those cards into the hands of families that have needed those, tutoring, babysitting, transportation, all of the different methods, and we've had a great response from our community in terms of wanting to help those in need. The 19% of our survey, or 10 responses, did request prayer, and we did send those, all 10 of those requests, to our campus minister and administrative team, all who have each committed them to daily prayer in their lives. And then 24%, or 13 responses, were identifying financial hardship. And for those, they immediately go to that COVID response financial assistance route so that we can try to get money into their hands as quickly as possible. So that is a definite route that we would ask families, if you are interested in financial assistance, to pursue. The way that you can find that route is really off of our the front page of the Roncalli website. And if you scroll down on the Roncalli website for and this is really for financial assistance for the current school year, we have a section set aside for coronavirus and COVID-19 related information right here under Roncalli Relief and Resource Survey. That is a quick way to try and apply for financial assistance, especially for the current school year, if you have received a loss of income due to the pandemic. And then also on the website, if you move to the admissions tab and down to financial assistance, this is the area, once you click on that tab, that will take you to the financial assistance application for the next school year, for 2021. And that's where we would encourage you to go for financial assistance for the next school year. The programs that we have are really set aside specifically for families, and we hope that you do take advantage of those. So this essentially wraps up the presentation on tuition and financial assistance. Again, the contact at Roncalli High School, if you are interested in financial assistance, your first stop is with Amy Kuntz, and her email again, akuntz@roncalli.org, and she can certainly walk you through all the options that you have available to you. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Therese and Chuck.
Thank you, Dave. And I do want to thank Dave, our Finance Committee of the Board and our Financial Aid Ad Hoc Committee of the Board, who have reacted very quickly, obviously on short notice, to try and make these additional financial aid opportunities available. To those that are listening, we remain committed to offering a Catholic education to all those who desire it and do not wish to have finances stand in the way of that. To those that are listening, if you know of family or friends or coworkers or loved ones who might be reconsidering their decision on Roncalli due to finances, I would ask that you please reach out to Amy and Dave and allow us to work with you to make that opportunity available. We know there are great challenges out in the community, but we also feel that we're prepared to handle those challenges and make a Roncalli education still available to all those in need. So thank you. Dave, thanks for the great work there.
Sure.
I'm going to move to some of the submitted questions. These were questions we got ahead of time. There were only a handful of them. I'll work through those, and then we'll go through the questions that have been submitted here via chat tonight, some of which might be duplicated, I suspect, Therese, when I get through these. First question was, what are the school's guidelines of when to reopen? Again, we'll be continuing to flush those out. Reopen has two meanings to it, I guess. Reopen for us means July 1, when we can begin to allow people to be back on campus and using our facilities. As I've indicated, I'd say we're about halfway done with that process, maybe a little bit more. And then we'll flush all that out, run it in front of the people that will need to get its approval, and hopefully communicate that to our families that week of June 22nd. What guidelines look like to reopen in August, I would say that remains to be seen. There were some follow-up questions related to that. Will the kids be asked to wear a mask to school? I don't have a definitive answer to that. My early sense is, if you look at the governor's plan, by July 1, when we are reopening much of the state, the governor's wording on that is that they are optional at that point. They're not even recommended. They're simply optional. I did read about a 50-page document last night about schools in Europe and Asia that have reopened since their specific areas were impacted by the coronavirus. Most of them were not requiring masks for students. Some were. I mean, this includes pretty much all of Asia, Europe, New Zealand, Australia. So again, we'll see. At this point, undecided, but I doubt that will be the change. How will the sick policy change? Obviously, we'd have to be more lenient. Currently, our sick policy is on your 11th absence in a semester. Your 11th absence in a semester, you lose credit unless there is some type of extenuating circumstance for which we've got medical documentation. So obviously, we'll have to be much more lenient in that situation for next year. Will the fundraising requirements, and then it puts in parentheses, walkathon, change for next year? It's a great question. The board, as Dave mentioned, had their final board meeting of the year last night. It was a scheduled board meeting at which time they passed the budget for next year, which, as Dave said, included a freeze in tuition. But that budget does include line items for the walkathon. It does include line items for Revelation. It does include line items for our annual fund dinner. All of those items go to financial assistance for our school and community. So they are in the budget and certainly will be counted on in some way. What that looks like in terms of walkathon, which normally is held in October, annual fund dinner in September, Revelation in April, I don't know that we'd be in a position to say specifically what it's going to look for, but I think it's important for our community to know that the budget that our board passed last night does include those in there as financial monies, and that we will be counting on during the 2020-21 school year. How will e-learning be different next year? Again, as I said, we've had great response to the surveys, and we've already got our IT and our technology integration people working. I really think our teachers deserve a break. I think our students deserve a break here. When we get to Thursday, grades will obviously be due in next Tuesday, report cards out next Thursday. I think all of our teachers and students, and probably parents for that matter, need to take a deep breath, throw their Chromebook, on the couch, not look at it for a while, and just get away from all that for a little while, and then we'll turn our attention full bore. So I hesitate to say exactly what it's going to look like. I think what we're trying to ascertain is what worked best during the last 9 weeks, what worked best for our teachers, and what worked best for our students. Identify that and make sure it's used by an increasing number of our teachers for next year, and vice versa. What didn't work well for teachers and what didn't work well for students, and make sure we're addressing that so that we don't continue to try and use that if we're in an e-learning extended period next year. How are we sure that our kids are receiving a high-quality education? Well, again, I think that the results that we've seen so far from our student survey certainly speak to the fact these kids felt like it was a very solid format for them. Again, we'll continue to hear more feedback from students and teachers. I think we've done a dynamite job. I think there are certainly areas where we need to get better and will get better, but I think excellence continues to be found in the education offering. Now, make no mistake about it. Make no mistake about it. The best education that a child can receive is being in the halls of this school in front of these teachers on a daily basis. And it's not just about their education. It's about their formation as young people. You know, we've learned a lot during this e-learning time period. And while I know there are some kids, probably those that might be more on the introverted side, that kind of like that, the reality of it is the human being is made for interaction. And Catholic schools are at their absolute best. Sorry about that. I clicked myself off.
Yeah.
Catholic schools are about community, and we have to be in person. We've done a good job, but Catholic schools through the centuries, through the generations, are about building community, and we will continue to do that. Are there any ideas to improve the social aspect or lack thereof for e-learning? I do think that'll continue to be one of the hot spots that we will identify. How best can we engage kids in social interaction with their teachers, with their students, with their peers in an extended e-learning period? And that's certainly something we'll be focusing on as we in-service our teachers here this summer. Next question is, what help is needed at school? Really appreciate the offer there. And quite frankly, I've heard that from a number of parents who've emailed me over the last 9 weeks. How can we help? And while we appreciate that, right now, I'd say since the school's closed, there's not a lot we can do. The immediate help would be to make sure you fill out that survey to let us know what we can do better and what worked for you and your children. And then I suspect as we get closer to the start of August, there might be some definitive ways by which we could ask teachers or parents for their help. But we do appreciate that caring support. Dave Gervasio mentioned it in his comments. Just the wonderful responses we got when we asked people, what can we do for you? And immediately gift cards started flowing in. Certainly food cards, gift cards to grocery stores and so forth. So just a wonderful response from the Roncalli community. And if you weren't a part of it or haven't read, our Revelation, which is really the premier fundraising event of the year, had to go virtual in the time of about 6 weeks. They had to plan and pull off a virtual Revelation. And we were just right now, we're right on the verge of making $120,000, which is exactly what we had budgeted to make this year. So that's quite heroic, quite frankly. Hats off to Therese Carson and our advancement team, but a double hats off to all of those in the Roncalli community who were so generous in their support of Revelation this year. Next question, what will the service hour requirement be for next year? I'd say that'll have to be revisited once we get a sense of whether we're in school or not and whether kids can be out traveling to these places safely. As you know, when the pandemic hit, we had to back off service hour requirements because they couldn't get into nursing homes, couldn't get into places where many of our kids do the service hours. So all that will have to be revisited once we have a clearer picture as to what's allowed. Those were the end of the questions that were submitted ahead of time. I can see that we've got a number have come in. So Therese, I'll turn it over to you for questions.
Thank you. The first question submitted, Chuck, can you discuss freshman orientation?
Yeah, that's something Kevin Bonich, our assistant principal for student life, oversees, and he and I have had some initial conversation. We're really kind of waiting to see as to maybe mid-June to see if we get any further direction from the governor and DOE. July 1, you're up to crowds are allowed of 250 or more, and we can social distance. And so I'd say tentatively, we're hopeful that we can pull off a freshman orientation that's either identical to or close to what we traditionally have here. But until we get further guidance from the governor and DOE, I'd hesitate to say exactly what it will look like.
Second question. Chuck, I believe this is one for you to answer. Could you provide an update on the president search process?
Yeah, as best I can. The board, we've heard multiple times already tonight, the board had its final board meeting of the school year last night. And at that time, Superintendent of Catholic Schools, Gina Fleming, made a presentation to them that indicates the presidential search will reopen, I think, effective today with applications due in by June 15th. And that's about the extent of what was shared at the board meeting last night. There was not a timetable established as to when they might expect a president to be hired. I would say that Gina was emphatic that the Archdiocese and specifically the Office of Catholic Schools will be extending what I think, if you, and you guys were both in the same meeting, I think they said would be providing extensive support for the school, Roncalli, during this time that we would be potentially without a president. Dr. Hollowell's last day is June 30th. And he'll be moving into other options that he's pursuing at this point in time. I myself, this is my opinion, it's not Gina Fleming's, it's not Therese Carson's. I doubt that we'll have a president in place by July 1. And so that's why I think Gina continued to reference that the Archdiocese and the Office of Catholic Schools will be lending significant support to Roncalli until such time a new president's named.
Next question. Are there medical professionals on the Archdiocesan Task Force?
You know, that's a very good question. I don't know the answer to that because the task force that I'm a part of is looking at the educational piece. I believe the diocese has a full scale, multiple task force. I know Ed Isaacson, who heads up the human resources program, would oversee his own task force related to, benefits and sanitation and so forth. But to know exactly who's on that panel, I do not know the answer to that.
Dave, a Future Foundations question. If we were approved for work days and our event was canceled, what is the plan? Do we not just receive the money towards tuition?
If you did have this, so for all of our families, our Future Foundations program is a program where families can work at specific events at Lucas Oil Stadium or possibly at the 500. And it has been tied into our financial assistance program for the last maybe 10 years or so. The dates here in the spring obviously have been canceled. If you had one of those dates and were due to receive financial assistance for that, that is something where you can contact either myself or Amy. And if you had already signed up for that, we would certainly work with you to get you credit for that through our financial aid program. And then for next year, I can tell you this, we have reached out to Lucas Oil Stadium and to the Indy 500, and as you can imagine, they are non-committal on their dates in order to for us to try and set up a schedule for families to work dates at those venues. Even if they do have the events, they're not necessarily going to have fans, so there's not necessarily need for concessions. So for next year, we have essentially canceled the piece of our financial assistance that there used to be a requirement for to work days out at those stadiums. So the financial assistance will still exist, but the work requirement will not for next year. If dates become available, because we have also had the ability for folks to work additional events towards their tuition. If in the future, if those dates do become available, we will certainly make them available to our Roncalli community. The program is going through with a change in terms of the IRS expectations. So we'll walk through all of that with families, but that's our intent for the future. So for the current year, again, if you did and are not available to work those dates, please contact myself or Amy and we can work through that.
And Dave, I think you just answered this, but I'm fielding questions and writing them down. So it said, how will future foundations be handled with financial aid recipients for next year? I believe you just answered that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Another one for Dave. Will the financial aid award be announced to each family Will it be announced prior to the first tuition payment date? And so that we will know what our total tuition bill will be.
Great question. Yes, we certainly will. As I did mention, we were late in trying to determine what our tuition level was going to be, and that obviously affects what our financial assistance awards are going to be. So all of that was approved last night. We anticipate getting that mailing together here in the next week and probably have that out to you within a couple of weeks, which should be well prior to the first tuition payment that is due in July. Here's the other thing that I would add to that. We have already set up one of our special review dates for June 30th. So you're going to be receiving your financial assistance notifications here probably by the end of May, and that gives you 30 days if in fact something should happen in terms of a loss of income from the pandemic. We already have one special review date set up prior to that first tuition payment in July. Let me add as well, we're certainly willing to work with you in terms of a payment schedule. If you don't necessarily feel like you need financial assistance, but you maybe need tuition payments pushed back towards later in the year, we can certainly work with you to set up a payment schedule that better fits your cash flow needs in order to make things work to be able to send your student here to Roncalli.
Okay, next question. What has the impact been on the enrollment to date? And will this mean many teachers will not be offered contracts?
Good question as well. Right now, enrollment continues to trend in the right direction. Now, granted, I think all faith-based schools, all private and parochial schools in the country certainly are working diligently and potentially holding their breath because, as Dave said, we're well aware of the challenges many families face. But right now, again, we've had almost 3 or 4 new students enrolled here this week. Right now, our enrollment is right at where we had placed it in the budget. And I think we'll continue to add some students over the next 6 weeks between end of May and June. And then I would say traditionally, we could lose some families once financial aid notifications go out. Some families may make a decision that it's not going to be feasible for them. That number's dwindled the last couple of years. But right now, enrollment's holding steady, and all teachers that we plan on having contracts. Our teacher retention's been very solid as well. We have the tradition. We've had some retirements, got a couple folks moving either out of state or further away down into the Evansville area. So kind of the normal procedures, what we'd see for teacher retention. Certainly nothing out of the ordinary at all.
Thank you. Next question. May students wear masks even if they are not required to?
Absolutely. Again, I read that lengthy report last night, and that was one of the things. Some schools, some kids were wearing them. Yeah, that'll absolutely be allowed.
Dave, tuition question. Will the additional fees added to those paying monthly versus annually tuition be eliminated?
That's a good question. At the current time, and in fact, I saw one of the questions in the chat was that tuition, I think it was listed at $99,710 versus the $9,830 that I had listed on that form. So I can actually maybe answer both questions at the same time. The $9,710, we have traditionally offered a 3% discount to families that pay their tuition in full up front. And that is the rate that they're at the $97.10. So we are still going to offer that tuition discount for the 2021 school year. So if you're looking at it as though, well, this is a fee for families that are paying for over 10 months. If you do want to look at it that way, that's fine as well. But I would tell you that fee will still be in existence for the next school year. But if you do choose to pay up front, there is a 3% discount off the tuition.
Dave, and once again, you may have answered this. When will financial aid decisions for 2020, 2021 be mailed to families?
Right, did touch on that earlier, and we anticipate probably getting that out hopefully here by the end of May. Again, having a full month, first tuition payment not due until July 10th. And again, there's a special review date in between those two dates. I would also add that if you are now applying for assistance for the first time, I would encourage you to do that as quick as possible so that we can get that evaluated and get that information back to you.
Chuck, I believe this is an academic question for you. How about the students' grades that fell dramatically as they did not excel at e-learning? Will you follow the townships with the last 9 weeks grades?
No, we'll follow exactly what we shared with the parents and teachers, and that is the third quarter grade will count for 60% of the second semester grade, and the fourth quarter grade will count for 40% of their grade. The additional step that we've made is we won't allow a student's semester grade, their second semester grade, to be anything less than one full letter grade lower than their third quarter grade. So I'm not going to get into a great deal. It's not my desire nor my intent, nor am I in a position to judge how public schools ran theirs, but there's a reason we had school the last 9 weeks. Education was offered, a quality education was offered during that time period. Teachers were working harder than they've ever worked. And so we felt it's fair to hold our kids accountable. Now, I realize that some kids were in very precarious situations. We've been over backwards. We've made home visits. We've visited parents at their workplaces to try and help them. We've helped families get internet connected at discounted rates. To back away and to act as if the last 9 weeks didn't happen academically would be a significant mistake in the eyes of our administrative team. So 60% of their grade will be that third quarter, which was all in person. 40% will be their fourth quarter. And no student's semester grade would be lower than one full letter grade than their third quarter grade.
Will students be tested for the coronavirus prior to physically coming back to classes?
Certainly, that'd probably be a decision the governor and the health department would make. I've not heard that as a part of any of the discussions that I've been a part of. I'm not saying it won't be in the future, but I've not heard that at any point in this part.
What happens with iStep?
iStep's been waived. That's a good question. So iStep has been waived.
What protocol exists if a student or staff member tests positive for COVID-19? Also, will there be a medical professional on staff at Roncalli when we go back to campus?
So again, I think all those things will be set out by the governor and the Department of Ed. Those guidelines will be set for us. I don't think that's a decision Chuck Weisenbach or the board will get a chance to make. I think that those decisions will be made for us and communicated to us by the state, either Department of Ed, the governor, or the Marion County Department of
Health. Dave, will the book fees be due with the first tuition payment?
The book fees that were listed that I did show on the screen, they are spread out over whatever payment method that you choose. So if you choose our quarterly payments, the book fees are going to be spread out over those 4 payments. If you choose our 10-month payment, they'll be spread out over 10 months, so on and so forth.
There's a question, what are the requirements placed on PPP money received from the government?
Great question. Essentially, I'll stick with the big picture items in terms of the requirements placed by the government. That does require you to essentially maintain the same staffing level for the 8-week period from when that money does arrive in your account. You have to have the same staffing levels, full-time equivalents that you had prior to that the receipt of the money, and you are essentially not allowed to drastically reduce salaries either. So I'll leave it at those 2 being the big requirements for the PPP money.
Chuck, here's one. Will the service cord requirements be adjusted for the next couple of graduating classes?
Yep. Once we get a better handle on what, what kids can and can't do and what can we expect, we will make those adjustments.
Looks like our last two questions are both related to SAT and ACT. Just they're wanting to know if there's any updates, recommendations, or plans.
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't heard much from the College Board here recently. As you know, the last round of tests there in May were done online. We would have to wait to hear more from the College Board, and they have been a little bit quiet. Now, I will say we're right in the midst of AP testing. AP testing was last week, and AP testing is this week, which that is the College Board as well. The College Board runs the SAT. My suspicion is they got their hands filled because all AP testing is being done online around the country as well. So you've got tens of thousands of kids taking AP tests online. I suspect we'll hear more here. What I'll try to do is reach out. I'll put a note down right now and reach out to Lisa Beckwith and Guidance to see if they have anything updated, and if so, we'll put it in our weekly newsletter.
Okay, sorry, another one that I missed. It's on the mask. If a student wants to wear a mask, are there any restrictions on what can be on the mask material?
Just a normal, traditional, must be a good, upstanding moral. We can't be advertising Budweiser or anything that would be immoral or unethical. But other than that, if they want to have SpongeBob SquarePants or whoever, Bugs Bunny, that's fine with me.
Perfect. Here's another one. Will you be able to keep Roncalli email live for seniors for a while?
Yeah, traditionally we leave our seniors email open until December 31st. So they'll graduate traditionally in obviously May, this group in July. We would keep their Roncalli email open until December 31st.
Wonderful. These aren't questions, but a couple comments that I wanted to share with everyone, just because I've been so proud personally of Chuck and our faculty and our staff and what they've been able to do. And so we had one private comment in the question and answer that they said that they have a child in a public high school and his work was nothing in capital letters compared to my Roncalli student. No test, not required for attendance. His grade was sealed at the end of third quarter. There was absolutely no accountability to work or to work harder to improve his grade. So thank you, Roncalli, for providing a wonderful education the last quarter of school. And then there was also a comment, and many comments, just saying thank you so much for continuing to have high academic standards. And so I think that was one of the points of the webinar today, is that we want our families to returning to know that whatever August looks like, that our high academic standards are going to be at the forefront, in addition to the health and safety of our students and faculty and staff.
Yeah, and Teresa, I would say to that, I wouldn't want to give anyone I don't want to sugarcoat it and say that life was perfect at Roncalli. It's never perfect, number one. I don't want to sugarcoat it. There were a lot of things that went really well with e-learning, especially considering the fact we had almost 48 hours to adapt to an extended period. We know there are issues to be resolved, and we're going to work diligently to get to those so that we can offer, again, an outstanding Catholic education to our kids and families come August. So I don't want to say it was perfect. I would say this, and some of these parents listening tonight, these are their children, so it's very sensitive when I say this. I'm very compassionate and sensitive. Whether you're in an e-learning format or whether you're in person, there are some kids who are motivated to learn, who are gifted to learn, and quite frankly, many of them are going to excel, whether it's in e-learning, whether we put them on Mars or whether we put them at Roncalli, they're going to excel. What we did find is that our kids in our STARS resource program, also, many of them did quite well, especially if they were accessing the resources that STARS provided them, which included daily video conferencing with those kids to help them. What we do know is we have some kids who live in homes that have a high level of dysfunction or a very minimal level of academic support. And some of those kids who are also not terribly motivated academically, that is a challenging environment for them. They need Roncalli. That kid needs to be in front of his teacher who can push them along every day. We know that. And so that's a group that we're going to have to work diligently. And we do have some ideas. We have some creative ideas as to how we're going to continue to reach out to them in a better way should we be pushed back into an extended e-learning come August. So again, it wasn't perfect, but we are going to get better, and we're going to continue to offer a high quality Catholic education. But I do want to say thank you to all of our parents who are out there for their wonderful support.
Hold on, Chuck, one more. Can someone share what was announced? I'll just say, and then you won't have to answer it. There's a couple people that are typing that they tuned in about 10 or 15 minutes after the webinar started. And tomorrow you will all receive a recording of this webinar through your parent email account that you got this invite to for the webinar. And that way you'll be able to go back and see if there's anything that you missed or something that you would like to hear again. I think that answers the question.
Awesome.
And
thanks for hanging with us, people. You're probably as tired of video conferencing and all that as we are. So thanks for all. If we didn't get to your questions tonight or more come up tomorrow, please email Treese, Dave, or myself. God bless you, Roncalli.